I rise to oppose this bill. And while we see the circus going on in Canberra with Michaelia Cash trying to delay action, trying to delay the intentions, we see the same thing here with this bill, whilst the government responds in meaningful ways to ensure that our construction industry can continue to deliver the infrastructure that our city needs, that we continue to get on with building the housing that Victorians need. Those opposite would prefer that tens of thousands of workers go home rather than getting to work and getting on with building what Victorians need. It would mean that we are left without the critical road and rail infrastructure that we know that this city, that this state absolutely needs to set us up for future generations. And we have Greg Wilson, who will have his final report by the 29th of November. We know that this work is coming from someone who is highly respected, work that can be implemented, but those opposite do not want to work to that, as typically of the Conservatives in this party, the National and Liberal coalition. Everything is a knee-jerk reaction. It's a thought bubble that's been drafted up by I don't know who, but without engagement, without consultation, without thinking about the bigger picture, drafted up and rushed into Parliament to try and get a cheap, quick win. Now, we know that industrial relations is a matter for the Commonwealth, and it was in fact those opposite. Some may recall Jeff Kennett. Jeff Kennett did that. He referred that off to the Commonwealth. And I believe, Mr McCracken is very aware of the activities of Mr Kennett and the terrible things he did across this state in the regions. But this was, you did miss that. And that's, I think, the fact that your party has missed the fact that Mr Kennett referred those laws is that it is a federal issue. But that being what it is, this government is getting on with our referrals have been made to IBAC. That opportunity is there for IBAC, for Vic Police, and as I said before, Greg Wilson. But those opposite don't want to see those avenues used. They don't want to use those avenues. They want to come in here, and there was just a contribution being made before about drug dealing on construction sites. I think the Royal Commission into the banks probably exposed a hell of a lot more drug use and drug dealing in our white-collar institutions than Hayden's Royal Commission, Hayden's politically driven and politically motivated attack on workers around this country, which, for the millions of dollars that was spent, for the time that was consumed, what did it turn up? What did it turn up? And this is what we see time and time again from the National Liberal coalition, that they want to go on politically ideological witch hunts. And that is what they will do, and we know that they will work to lower the pay and the conditions of workers. And anyone old enough will remember work choices. They will remember work choices and the Liberals' absolute drive to reduce the pay and conditions of workers. That is absolutely in their DNA. So this bill looks to bulldoze through with no consultation, no engagement. Where is the things flying across the other side. Things flying across the other side of the chamber there, because they know they are absolutely bringing a bulldozer of a bill with no consultation, no engagement. Your business as usual for the coalition. That's exactly right, because there aren't the values. There isn't the development of policy. They bring things and want to rush it through, and there's no discussion, there's no detail about how it will work, what will be the regulatory burden, how it will be funded. We don't even know if it's lawful. We don't even know if it's lawful. But at least over there, you're consistent. You're consistent, bringing things to this place that are ill-conceived, poorly put together, and indeed waste a hell of a lot of our time, unfortunately. But we do know this bill, the impacts it will have on people trying to get gainful employment, people trying to provide for their families. This will be like a wrecking ball coming through in what is a dangerous industry. And I often talk about the fact that those opposite have never stepped foot in the TAFE. Well, I'm pretty sure they've never set foot on a construction site. It's a dangerous industry. And Miss Watt spoke earlier about when we remember annually the workers that have died across our state every year. The tragedies that occur, whether it's those working on sites or when we've seen public who have been injured and killed by unsafe construction standards, it is those workers, those families that are paying the ultimate price when corners are cut on safety. It ripples through communities, and that doesn't even go to amputations, to injuries that stop people from being able to continue in their work. And it's critical that we have our workforce to deliver our major infrastructure. The major infrastructure investments in our road and in our rail, that we know that those opposite didn't start one major transport infrastructure project in their 4 years. Doolittle and nap time were frozen. And it's the same National Liberal coalition. It's the same National Liberal coalition that have no values, no plans, no ability to be able to produce or deliver anything for this state. Whereas we're seeing major projects being delivered. Level crossing removals ahead of time. Metro tunnel ahead of time. These are going to unlock the economic productivity of this state for generations to come. And we've employed people on the way through, and we've trained apprentices, we've trained trainees, because we know that you lot, like when you scrapped the SEC, you didn't care about generations of workforce. You didn't. There's no consideration. And again, it comes back to that no values, no policy. There's no consideration of a pipeline of workers, because you need to ensure that pipeline continues. So those that grow into their profession, that master their skills, can train the next generation. So we see a continuity and a continual improvement on the skills and ability of our workforce here in Victoria. And we know that those opposite, when legislation has been brought forward, whether it's industrial manslaughter, whether it's wage theft, whether it's portable long service, whether it's engineered stone, silicosis, when it's something that is there to protect the health and well-being of workers, when it is something to protect the income of workers and their families and our communities, because when we talk about values and believing that we want to see workers go home well paid at the end of the day so they can support their families and so that income is within our communities and supports our communities to thrive, unlike the beliefs, again, as I said, the valueless and planless and policyless opposition who are still dreaming of their days in student politics at uni, worshipping Reagan and Thatcher and whatever on earth those economic policies there were. And I made mention last sitting that, I'll note it wasn't those opposite, but your Liberal counterparts couldn't even bring yourself to see minimum paid workers get $1 more an hour. A simple recommendation to the Fair Work Commission, that was too much for you lot to stomach, because you don't want to see workers get even $1 more. And your think tanks, the reason why you lot come in here, we're about to go into question time, the reason why you lot can never have a bloody well-versed question is because you need your think tanks to write everything for you. So it's okay if something breaks over the weekend, but if something happens in the moment, you sit there with your questions, you don't know which minister to ask, you don't know what to ask, you've got no idea unless your think tanks are sending it through on the fax machine to you, because you don't have the internet, you don't even believe in the science of the internet. So unless that's sent through to you...
Thank you, Mr McIntosh. Mr Davis, on a point of order.
He's now talking about think tanks and this and that, and it's nothing at all to do with the bill.
There is no point of order. Mr McIntosh to continue.
Thank you. So following on from those major projects, we know what runs on that rail, on those train lines, on those tram lines, is built here by Victorians for Victorians. And again, I'm sorry to come back to values and that lack of values, that lack of plan, that lack of policies you lot have, because again, you'd just rather ship off the work to the lowest paid denominator contract. You don't want to see that work being performed here, building the next pipeline of workers, the pipeline of workers that we've put the training and skills system around.
Order. Sorry, as it's 12 o'clock, I now have to interrupt business.